There are a lot of young girls who think you can spend a little time in the porn industry, make some money, and get out. One of them, Lara Roxx, a young woman who says she wanted to be a mainstream model, but when she couldn't get work there, she thought she wasn't pretty enough. So she decided that she'd go make a little money for school somewhere else, on a porn set. She grew up an only child in Montreal, Canada, from an educated middle-class home. But Lara, who is French-Canadian, says she mostly remembers the bickering between her parents.
Around me and seeing that my parents were unhappy together, and that made me unhappy. And
she says she was trying to get her parents' attention, but when she became a teenager, she began to act up, and her parents put her in a facility for troubled teens. Afterwards, a job in a strip club. Then, to earn some extra money, she says she got an agent and thought she'd do a short stint in porn movies. She says she was firm. She would not have any unconventional intercourse and absolutely no scenes without a condom. But she says her agent warned that she wouldn't get much work that way.
Get in the porn industry, you're pretty young, like 18 to 21. And the men that are getting you in there are like 40 to 80. So it's easy for them to make you accept ideas that you wouldn't have accepted from somebody your age.
It's about money. The distributors can only distribute to so many countries if there's a condom on. It sells more if there's not a condom on.
Again, this is Sharon Mitchell, who runs the adult industry medical clinic that tests performers. She says there's a huge pressure to push performers into what's called gonzo porn, a whole area of movies where anything goes. Another warning, this is not easy to hear.
And it's as extreme as possible. It's multiple penetrations, it's fisting, it's all about unprotected anal sex. A few people still do vanilla, regular sex, but for the most part, it's as kinky as they can get and as much as they can push it as possible. That's the majority of the porn that's out there, and that's what we're dealing with.
So you think you want to be a porno star?
Well, yeah.
But back then, Lara, new to the business, agrees to make a movie in LA with a man named Mark, an actor-director who impressed her by saying he had worked with her favorite hip-hop artist, Snoop Dogg. Lara's agent tells her not to go. She'll be eaten alive in LA. But despite the warning, she thinks for a short stay, how bad could it be?
I really thought people in the industry were really clean and got tested like regularly. And
she gets to the set and, as we've heard so often from performers before, says it's not the kind of sex scene she expected. Now she's told it will be unconventional sex with two men at the same time.
And he said, no, you're here for double anal. So I freaked out. My heart started beating really fast, and I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I could do a double anal. And he's like, well, it's either that or we don't need you.
And Lara says she needed the money. She had to pay back the $1,100 plane ticket to Los Angeles. She was going to be paid $1,300 for that double penetration. She calls it DP.
So I did the DP.
To get through it, Lara says she mentally broke out of her body and went over to a corner of the room.
Where there's no Mark, there's no Darren, there's no camera. And I would look there and think about the sand, the beach.
But when she woke up the next day,
it started aching. And I started having a yeast infection because he went.
Days later, she was feeling tired all the time, she says, and thought maybe she had mono or something worse.
We deal with every day with chlamydia, gonorrhea, hepatitis, all types, A, B, and C. We deal with gonorrhea of the throat. We deal with things that you can't possibly imagine that are not normally a sexually transmitted disease, that are a sexually transmitted disease in porn.
But the news Lara received went a step beyond.
Michelle, the actor who tested positive is named Darren James. He is a veteran of adult film.
I called Darren James and left him a death threat on his answering machines. I was telling him how I was going to kill him and kill myself after. I was crying.
That's right. She had just made a movie with the same Darren James making the headlines, the actor who touched off the HIV scare.
Had been infected in Brazil and spread the disease to a Canadian actress credited as Lara Roxx.
Lara was alone in LA. She'd only been there 1 month. In her $44 a night hotel room, she tried to grapple with the horrifying news.
I freaked out. I started yelling and punching the walls, and
She sought out Bill Margold, who runs a helpline for people in the industry, a shoulder to cry on.
And I looked at her test. It said the word detected on her test. And I held her in my arms, and she quaked like she'd been hit by 10 points on the Richter scale.
Over the days that followed, the public would learn the intimate details of how it happened, how Darren James had been shooting a movie in Brazil. No condoms. It's believed he contracted the deadly virus there.
Brazil has a higher HIV rate than the United States. So when people go down to Brazil to shoot adult films, they are certainly rolling the dice a little bit more than they would anywhere else.
Just a few days after his return from Brazil, James shot the double penetration scene with Lara, the girl who thought she'd spend a couple of months to get a little extra money in porn.
To me, somebody could have raped me and killed me, and it would have been less upsetting to me and my family, you know? Well,
Lara says she thought about suicide.
I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of dying of, like, HIV.
She stayed up all night struggling with what she'd do. But then, she says, when the sun came up,
And when I heard the birds and I saw the sunshine, I felt like, well, I do not want to die. That's when I choose to live.